This is the continued story of the book I Saw God's Hand by E.L. Martin, as retold to the children of the Watertown SDA Church Primary Sabbath School. I'm your storyteller, Austin Bacchus. Let's go. Then to the Highlands. During 1954, Mrs. Martin and I received a letter from the Coral Sea Union Mission headquarters, advising that we were being transferred to a place called Paglum, near Mount Hagen in the Western Highlands of New Guinea, to take over a new mission station. The land had been purchased and a few temporary buildings had been erected. Within a few weeks, my wife and children flew from Port Moresby to Mount Hagen to join me. We were thrilled with the Paglum mission station. It looks out over the great Wagi Valley, a scene that continually delighted us. But one thing that dampened our enthusiasm a little was that we had to live in a grass house with a bamboo floor. And every time there was heavy rain, we had to take all our umbrellas, saucepans, buckets, and dishes and put them in strategic places to keep our beds from getting wet. And there were one or two weak spots in the bamboo floor, several areas that had actually even broken open. My wife, who was not usually demanding, felt that I should do something about putting a new grass roof on the house and repairing the floor. As far as the roof was concerned, I figured that when it was raining, it was too wet to do anything, and then when the rain stopped, well, then there was no need to do anything. For some reason, my wife did not agree with my calculations. I wrote to the union headquarters asking whether they could send me sufficient money to build a new house. They replied they didn't have sufficient funds for that. So then I wrote a long letter explaining we were getting wet each night now that the rainy season had set in. Within a short time, I received a letter stating that they would send us the equivalent of $100 to help put on a new grass roof and put in a new floor in the old house. Well, as soon as I received this good news, I took it upon myself to travel 20 miles to where one of our church members, Frank Aveling, was operating his own sawmill. I asked, "Hey, how much lumber could you let me have for $100? "Well, enough to build the framework of a new house, provided you cut it yourself." Well, since I had training as a sawmiller, I found this offer attractive. Frank let me have a couple of his trained men, and all I had to do was to pay their wages, the royalty on the logs, and the cost of fuel for the motor. The next few weeks were busy ones for me as I cut the timber, carted it on a trailer behind an old wartime Jeep, and then erected the frame of our new house. When the frame was nearing completion, I again wrote to the union telling them what I had done and asking for extra money now to put a galvanized iron roof on the building. Unfortunately for us, the union committee did not take too kindly to my presumption, since I had spent the money on an entirely new building when they had given it to me just to repair the old building. They told us there was no more money available. Undoubtedly, I deserved the rebuke, for now we had a leaking roof and the frame of a new building, and no money to finish either one. What could I do but pray that the money for a new roof would come from somewhere? Just 2 or 3 days later, I was on the Mount Hagen airstrip, and I noticed half a ton of galvanized corrugated roofing iron set aside for the Togoba Hansenide colony. Hansenide is the modern term for leprosy. I notified Pastor Len Barnard, who was in charge of the Hansenide colony, that his iron had arrived. Len said, "That's not my iron. I didn't order any." The name of the firm that had shipped the iron was on the crate, so I wrote to them asking for some particulars. They answered by return mail they had made a mistake. The iron was supposed to go to another Hansenide colony on the coast of Madang. Further, they said that in view of the fact that it already cost the firm 60 cents a pound to ship all this iron to Mount Hagen, they would be better off just leaving it there rather than having it picked up and shipped from Mount Hagen to Hatzfeld. There'd be no cost to the mission. The mistake was entirely their own, and so the iron was mine for free. What a tremendous answer to our prayers. Within a couple of days, the iron was on our new house. We paid the villagers to make some bamboo walls for the outer, and my wife and I, from our meager savings, were able to pay for a floor from Brother Aveling's sawmill. The Paglum Mission House cost the union just $100 flat. We were surprised at the amount of medical work to be done at Paglum because there was a well-established, well-equipped government hospital at nearby Mount Hagen. One morning, a group of men came to the dispensary, and when I asked the first one what the trouble was, he said, "Master, teeth, he got pain." His teeth were hurting. I found that several back teeth were badly decayed. I proceeded to load up my syringe to give an anesthetic before the extraction, but as soon as he saw the syringe in my hand, he ran for the bushes, followed by his friend. I sent a boy to tell him to come back. The patient returned to about 15 yards away and shouted to me, "Master, you rouse him straight, no got shoot," meaning that he wanted me to just pull the teeth out without an anesthetic. He told me he could have had the teeth extracted at the government hospital at Mount Hagen if he wanted anything injected to deaden the pain. He had walked 10 miles past Mount Hagen to my station because they had heard that I would pull teeth without an anesthetic. I tried to explain to him the pain would be too much, but he replied, "Master, you try him, that's all." Meaning, you try, just try, that's all. So you know what? I pulled out 4 molars without anesthetic, and he never batted an eyelid. Then several more of the group asked me to pull their teeth, but added, "Master, rouse him straight, that's all, no got shoot," No anesthetic, please. From then on, I used to have teeth to extract every week. Men would walk right past the government hospital and hike another 10 miles to get me to pull their teeth, always demanding that I rouse him straight. Now notice, the Highland people as a whole have good teeth. Almost without exception, when I had to extract teeth, it was because of men who were flown out to the coastal copra plantations on 2-year labor contracts. On the plantations, they would be fed food rations of white flour, white sugar, and white rice. No wonder their teeth would rot. We had built up a reputation not only for pulling teeth, but also for delivering several babies without any real problems. The infant mortality was shocking in the area because of unhygienic conditions. One night, as I was packing up my camp equipment for a mountain patrol that would take me away for several weeks, there was a knock at the door. Our nurse girl came to advise us that 2 of the women on the mission station who were pregnant were now in labor. In other words, they were both ready to have their babies born. I wondered why they couldn't have picked a more convenient time. I told the girl, "Go back, get everything ready, I'd be down in a few minutes." My wife, who realized that I wanted to leave at dawn the next morning on my patrol and that I wasn't done packing yet, said that she would go down, for probably there would be hours yet until the babies would be born. And our second daughter, 10-year-old Edna, I always called her Midge because she was the smallest of our 4 children, said, "Don't you worry, Daddy, I'll go and help Mom." I said, "All right, off you go." About 2 hours later, when I had all my camp gear pretty well organized, I went down to see how the women in labor were doing. I stopped at the first house, where I knew one of the women would be, and there was Midge at the door. I asked how things were going. She replied, "Oh, it's all over, Daddy." I asked where Mum was, and she said, "Oh, Mum had told her to stay with this woman, for she would be some hours yet while she went on to another house. If the second woman was more advanced, then Mum would attend to her first and then come back and help Midge." I asked Midge whether she had tied off the umbilical cord all right and if she was sure there was no bleeding. I asked several questions concerning the delivery, including whether the woman had had hemorrhaging, meaning just bleeding without stopping. Midge told me, "Oh yes, she had hemorrhaging, but she gave her an injection to arrest that." I told Midge I thought I should maybe just check everything over to make sure the woman was all right. Midge was indignant with me, and I never had to fix a thing. Midge had delivered that baby. Even though Midge was only 10 years of age, she had seen her mother and me perform plenty of baby deliveries, but this was the first that she had managed entirely on her own. Midge and I then went on to the next house, and we were in time to help deliver the next baby. Mum was obviously a little off in her reckoning as to when she felt her woman would deliver before Midge's. At the breakfast table one morning, I was giving the children a lecture about giving an intramuscular injection into the buttock, explaining how to give such an injection without danger of hitting the sciatic nerve. A young man had just been carried in. He was paralyzed in the legs. I knew that someone on a patrol had not been careful, and they had hit the sciatic nerve. This is why I explained it to the children. Later on that same morning, I was at the dispensary giving a different buttock injection when my youngest son, Llewellyn, came over. He was about 5 years old, and as he watched me giving the injection, he said, "Daddy, I suppose you have to be a bit careful so you don't hit his brain." He thought the paralysis was directly related to the brain, not to the nerve from his sciatic nerve. Maybe at that stage he wasn't quite as advanced in his medical work as his sister Midge, who was delivering babies at age 10. Be sure to tune in next time for more stories from the book I Saw God's Hand by E.L. Martin. And meanwhile, feel free to check out these videos as well as others on my YouTube channel with many more mission and Bible stories for kids and adults. God bless you.